Hello, buddy. Welcome back to the Tin Man Score channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and today I'll be reacting to my third and final scary storyteller channel, and it's Mr. Haunted. And the video that I'll be reacting to is 4 True Abduction Horror Stories featuring Bad Vibes Storytelling. So without further ado, I'm going to turn these lights off, move the camera up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the road and in the bag, shall we? Okay, here we go.
This happened to me in the middle of February of 2017.
Okay.
For some context, I live in a relatively safe, secluded, gated neighborhood with my mom and younger sister. Even though our neighborhood was safe, the area around where we lived was the exact opposite. We lived in a part of a city that was notorious for street fighting, gangs, drug dealers, and other high crime, but we tried to stay away from that part of the area as much as possible.
I was just about to say, even though you live in a gated area of your city, sometimes the criminals from the outside that gated area can always find a way to sneak in and try to rob either you or your neighbor's houses or do a hit on somebody in that community. So, like you said, just stay out of that part of the area of the city and get into your house through the gate of the neighborhood, and you should be fine and dandy. But let's continue.
However, there would always be this one time during the week where I had to walk past that area in order to get to my house from school. My mom worked almost every day during the week, and on Wednesdays she had to work until 9 p.m., so I was put in the after-school care program for the days she worked late. Once after-school care had ended, I get on a bus with other kids and get dropped off near the other neighborhoods that had crime, as there was no other bus stop where we lived. It was really unsettling, but it was the only way to get home. Why my dad can't pick me up is another story. One day, I get off the bus and start walking to my neighborhood while looking at these small old houses that looked abandoned even though I knew people lived there. Broken windows, tall grass, graffiti, beer bottles, you get the picture.
That does sound like a rough area to walk through. I wish your city can add another bus stop that's more closer to where you live at, instead of dropping you off in the dangerous part of town just for you to walk back home. But don't pay attention to all them houses. You just keep walking and look around your surroundings, because in that area, I know you probably have some sketchy people looking at you and might want to follow you.
It's around 8 p.m. and I'm about 15 minutes away from my house and had about a good 20 minutes or so before it got dark. As I'm walking, I begin to hear what sounded like footsteps from behind me walking against the pavement. Out of curiosity, I turn around to see a man I'd never seen before following me. He was a white Caucasian man who wore basketball shorts, a white t-shirt, and a sports cap. I offer a friendly wave to him to try and act natural, but he showed absolutely no sign of acknowledgement. He started walking a bit faster until he finally caught up with me and put his hand on my shoulder. I stopped dead in my tracks and turned around once again. He says, "Hey there, kiddo. Are you lost?" I tell him no and that I'm on my way home. My mom is very strict with the whole stranger danger thing with us kids, so I remembered her advice and tried my best not to talk to him.
Yeah, but sometimes they will say something to where you have to reply just so they wouldn't think you're being rude. But don't give them any clue that you're going to be at the home by yourself, because then he'll know nobody will be looking for you if he decides to grab onto you.
I could give you a ride home if you want. It's gonna get dark soon. Why don't you come with me? He proceeded to pull out his hand, but I politely declined as I say I'm fine and I don't need a ride. All of a sudden, he grabs my arm and violently pushes me toward a fence and says, "If you don't come with me now, you're gonna see what's going to happen." At this point, I'm practically freaking out in the inside. He grabs my hand very tight and we start walking. All the while, negative thoughts immediately rushed into my brain. How I would never see my family again, or that I'd be taken away. We're heading down one of the neighborhoods when all of a sudden, a stroke of luck hits me. I see a man with his big German Shepherd coming down the sidewalk and I start screaming and crying for help. Both the man and the dog start charging at the man who was grabbing me, and he then let me go and takes off down the street. The dog tries to chase after him, but the owner called him back. The man then comforts me, and I'm trying my best to explain what had just occurred. He then calls the police, and they come and call my mom, who then leaves work immediately. Thankfully, the guy who tried to take me was caught and eventually arrested. Turns out, he had a history of charges. He was charged for theft, battery, drugs, and other illegal stuff that would end you up in jail. From now on, my mom works late on the weekends instead of the week. Thank you to those officers for giving the man what he deserves. And thank you to that good Samaritan and his dog for stepping in.
I'm telling you, because if they weren't there, she would have been put into his car and kidnapped. And you never know what that dude might do. But I'm also happy that the cops found him and arrested him. But with a rap sheet like Mr. Haunted just read off, I'm surprised his butt won't in jail to begin with, instead of being out in the streets, unless they were minor things. But now, he's definitely going to jail for a longer time. This is definitely a close call moment. But anyway, let's get to story number 2, shall we?
When I was about 9 years old, I was on my scooter on my way back from the field by my house. Me and my friend used to hang around there a lot, but it wasn't a proper playground, so we would just make dens in the woods and play football sometimes.
Yeah, of course, woods are not a safe place to play in like a playground would be, because you never know if a wild animal will come out and attack you while making a den in that area. But the woods is a good place to hide from anybody trying to chase you down. But I don't want to jump ahead, so let's just continue.
Anyway, my house isn't too far away from the field, but between the two areas, the quickest way back is through the alleyway that cuts through the woods and a few houses. I was on my scooter, heading back towards my house. As I'm going down this alley, a massive black van completely blocks the path ahead that turned out of an intersecting road. It completely blocked any way to pass, so the only way was to go back where I came from. I stopped dead in my tracks in front of the van, and the driver started rolling down his window. A man with glasses and beady eyes just stared back at me and began to talk. I didn't know him at all, and he certainly didn't live in our neighborhood. "Young man, can you help me for a second?" Me being the stupid 9-year-old that I was, thought he was asking for directions or something, so I responded, "Are you lost?" "No, but my cat's gone missing. Just come a little closer to the van for a second, and I'll show you a picture."
No, don't go near the van. That's a tactic just to lure somebody to them, and then they'll push you into the van. I would have said, can you just hand me the picture and I'll look at it to see if I can find your cat? Because that's really suspicious.
At this point, it clicked in my head what was going on. The fact that he wanted me to get closer to the vehicle struck so many alarm bells. Not just that, but I could see his arms ready at the van door to open it and grab a hold of me. I then realized how close I was to the van. I politely said, no, sorry," and just bolted down the alley. The scariest thing was, I could hear him opening the van door behind me. At that point, my heart sank into my stomach. He didn't actually chase me, I guess, but I could tell he wanted to make the effort. I ended up taking the longer route all the way to the main road back to my house, and thankfully, I didn't see him drive past. I've never forgot this story, and it honestly strikes me now that if I had stayed by the door, he could have just yanked me, and I would have been gone.
Thank God your brain kicked in at 9 years old and say that something is off. You go any closer to the van, he would have kidnapped you. But thank God he won't follow home so that guy won't know where he lived at. He definitely avoided being taken away forever if he didn't trust his instincts.
Before even starting the story, I want to acknowledge that I fully put myself in this position, but this is still one of the most potentially dangerous encounters I've ever had, so I wanted to share. At the time, I was 19 and barely scrapping together enough money to eat a few times a week, and I worked about a 2.5 hour walk away from my apartment. This particular day was 2 days before payday, and I didn't have the dollar to take the bus, so I decided to just walk to work since I normally walk that sort of distance anyway. I took off, and a couple of miles into the trip, it started to rain, like a total downpour. Of course, I didn't have an umbrella or a jacket and was wearing flip-flops, so the rest of the walk was looking pretty daunting. However, I had to get to work because I didn't have a cell phone to call and explain, and I needed this job. Shortly after the rain had started up, a man in a pickup truck pulled over and asked if I needed a ride. I knew full well that hitchhiking is a bad idea, but at the same time, I honestly didn't care.
I would agree too. Hitchhiking could be dangerous because you never know if you'll get picked up by creeps or not. And that goes for the hitchhikers themselves because I heard them other stories where people were picking them up and they were bad folks. But in this case, what else are you going to do? You get offered a ride, you might as well take it.
I was at a point in my life with a new mental illness, and I didn't really think too much about putting myself in harm's way because I didn't care much about the outcome. So, of course, I decided it would be better to get a ride with him than to walk the rest of the way. I get in the truck with him and tell him where I need to go, and he says, sure thing, and we start to head that way. He starts to ask me some strange questions like where do I work and if I had a boyfriend, family in the area, etc. We were getting close. I could see the mall I worked at, and he asked me if I'd like him to buy a pack of cigarettes or anything. I said yes, and that would be awesome. So he turns off course, but passes the gas station. He saw me look at him weird and just said, "Oh, actually, I have to stop at my apartment and get my wallet." At that point, I knew things were weird.
Yeah, that is kind of weird because why are you driving on the road without your wallet? I mean, that's what I'll be thinking. But he ain't going back there to get his wallet. He's going to take her to his apartment and try to hold her there, probably. At this point, I would try to unlock the door and jump.
But again, I was more curious than afraid, so I was like, alright, sure. We get to his apartment, and it's in the basement of one of those super old giant houses people divide up into apartments. The kind of stairs going down where you go below ground level outside with the concrete going up on both sides. There were no windows whatsoever. I said I'd wait in the truck, but he kept insisting that I go in with him because he just got a new stereo and wanted to show me. I knew this was a total lie, but again, I just wanted to see what would happen, so I went with him anyway. I go down the stairs and step in the door, but I did have at least the smarts to not go in further than a few feet and myself between him and the door. He wanted me to go into another room with him, so I just said, no man, I gotta get to work and you're gonna make me late. Get your wallet so you could get me cigarettes and then let's go. He went into another room for a minute and then came back out with an open beer and handed it to me and just wanted me to have one beer with him before we left. I told him if he thought I was that stupid, he had another thing coming. I had been promised cigarettes and a ride to work, and that's what he was going to do because otherwise he'd have a problem on his hands. Because I literally don't care, and he doesn't know what I'm capable of doing. I know, it's a bold statement for a 5'5", 19-year-old girl weighing at about 95 pounds. But again, mentally ill and really didn't care. And I was definitely no stranger to fight, so I wanted to try my luck.
Oh, yeah. You might as well believe her, dude. You don't get her to work, she is literally going to beat you down to the ground because of her mental state.
Surprisingly, he put the beer down and said, "Well, okay, let's go." And we went back outside and got back in the truck. He did go to the gas station and got me cigarettes, and then he dropped me off at work as promised. When he dropped me off, he said something to the effect of me being a lot more bold than I looked like, and I'd be so sorry for the trouble, and that was that. I never saw him again. I still have no idea as to what his intentions were, but I can't imagine they were good. Even though my mental illness got me into that situation, I think it probably also saved me by keeping me from being that easy target he was expecting. I still can't believe I ever accepted a ride from him, and much less than followed him into his apartment out of curiosity. But thank God, it all turned out just fine. I probably should have gotten his license plates and called the cops or something, but I didn't because I had my cigarettes and I was at work, so I was happy and didn't even think of it.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't really physically harm you, So if you call the cops saying that this man didn't even take you to work right away, but that he did after you kind of made a bold statement, they probably like, well, there's nothing they can do since you didn't get the license plate of his vehicle or what type of vehicle he's driving, and he paid for your cigarettes and got you to work. What are they going to do? And plus, I figure he made that statement towards her about her being bold because if she won't, she probably would have been locked up, tortured, or worse, deceased. Thank God she demanded to get her cigarettes and get to work.
Backstory that's relevant. I'm the oldest of three. Before my mom and dad got divorced, my dad was very mentally and emotionally abusive, and a few times almost became physically abusive. So I grew up very cautious and protective of my younger siblings. On to the story. At the time, I was about 8 and my sister was 6. So my mom was asleep, exhausted because my father would never let her sleep when he was home, and my father was now at work. My sister wanted something to eat, and my father yelled so loud the night before, it kept both of us up. But us being kids, we weren't tired from the lack of sleep. So I decided to treat her by picking up something that she wanted from the store. And at that point in time, I managed to save up about $2 in change. We have went to the store before by ourselves, and nothing happened, so I figured it would be fine.
Yeah, you would think nothing would happen, but you never know when the creeps will come out and stalk you.
We went to the store to get 2 donuts. We bought the donuts, and we still had 80 cents left. So me being smart, instead of going to the Circle K right next to the store, we went to the other one, only 10 minutes away, because the one right next to the store that we were at had a lot of druggies hanging around it. We both wanted an icy, and we're okay sharing since we didn't have enough money for 2. At the time, a large one was 69 cents, so we got it and left. We wanted to wait until we got home to eat our donuts, so we had 2 things to carry. My sister carried the donuts. I carried the drink. This is important. We started walking back home. As we were going to cross the street, this guy that was sitting on the corner called out for me and my sister. He looked creepy. I had an uneasy feeling, so I slowed my pace, holding my sister's hand, so she slowed down too. The guy called out for us and said, "Hey, come here. I got some toys that you can play with." I told my sister that my hand was getting sweaty and just switched to my other one. This put me between her and the creep. By doing this, I just switched my hand that was holding the cup, and the creep noticed that my sister wasn't holding one at the time. So he says to my sister, "Hey little girl, come here. Do you want a soda of your own? I can get you your own." My sister never had one of her own because I could never afford it. So this intrigued her, and she started walking to the other side of me, still
I'll be like, oh, no, don't believe what that guy is saying. He's a stranger and you're not supposed to take stuff from him.
holding onto my hand. At this moment, I noticed a car coming. I said, "Car, go," in a commanding voice to my sister, which meant there was a car coming and we had to run across the street if we didn't want to be hit. So we ran. As soon as we started running, the creep started getting up. I told my sister, "Race you," so she wouldn't stop running. Then when the car blocked the creep's view, I pulled her into the alley, and she gave me a questioning look as I put my fingers over my lips and pulled her behind the tree in the alley. The guy walked across the street, then past us. I was peeking between the leaves to keep watch. He was looking mad. After a few minutes of making sure he didn't come back, my sister and I went through the alley that led directly towards our apartments.
Yeah, I know your sister was little, and I could see her getting upset because she thought she was going to get a free drink of her own. But I'm glad her brother didn't aggressively say no, but just acting like everything was okay and made a game out of it for her and waited for that guy to pass. Thank God they got avoided being kidnapped that night and got home safely. Hope you all enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more Mr. Haunted related content like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man Score channel. I'm your host, Jeff, the Tin Man 2, and I said that's a wrap, and have a nice day, y'all.